Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rekakwadash Barakata. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and peace and salutations to Yakim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Rai with another video, and I'm going to be using an article from RT.com titled, Fragile. Pentagon Report raises alarm that U.S. industry can't support war for much longer. That's a beautiful headline because it's just more of an indication that Esau, the so-called white man's rulership, is almost up. And contrary to popular belief, the U.S. isn't the big bad boy on the block anymore. That's just propaganda the U.S. pushes out 24/7 to keep with that image of invincibility, but these other countries aren't falling for the okie doke anymore. Just think of the Iranian nuclear deal. The U.S. pulled out of it and is trying to bully other nations to leave it as well, but those other nations are doing their best to go around the U.S. and still do business with Iran, and these other nations are also seeing that the U.S. doesn't have the top-of-the-line military equipment anymore. Think of the Russian S-300 and S-400 missile defense system as compared to the U.S. Patriot missile defense system, for example. That Patriot defense system is malfunctioning quite a bit. Between globalization and nearly 20 years of constant warfare, the industrial part of the U.S. military-industrial complex is not looking so good, putting future wars at risk, according to a new Pentagon report. The annual Industrial Capabilities Report, published by the Pentagon's Office of Manufacturing and Industrial Base Policy, warns that reliance on foreign-sourced materials, combined with 20 years of intermittent conflict, have put a strain on U.S. manufacturers of weapons, parts, and ammunition. While U.S. national defense demands for materials are seldom unmet, there exists risks to their supply now, and risks are anticipated in the foreseeable future, the report says, describing the two broad trends as the scarcity of materials used in new technologies and the U.S.'s growing reliance on foreign supply sources. Both U.S. economic security and national defense are at risk due to high U.S. import reliance on foreign countries who may become adversaries and cut off peacetime supply during future conflicts, the report says. And that brings me to my first precepts in the book of Obadiah. I'm going to start at verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, or thy allies, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. And what did we just read? The Pentagon's worried that foreign nations that they get parts from for their military may turn against them in the foreseeable future in a conflict and prevailed against thee, and that would put the U.S. in a pretty bad spot. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. Again, these nations get paid in the bread of U.S. money for those parts, but if and when they do turn against the U.S., which they will towards the end of World War III, because it's prophecy, they're going to shoot their nukes over to the U.S. and turn the United States into the lake of fire. There's none understanding in him. Verse 8, Shall I not in that day, saith Yahweh, even destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? And we're seeing that now, because only a fool would use parts from a potential adversary for your military. You would think it would be smarter to manufacture those parts in the U.S. so they could be reliable, but as we can see, the Most High has taken that wisdom and understanding out of the mount of Esau. Verse 9, And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. And those mighty men are warriors, or soldiers, and those U.S. soldiers definitely will be dismayed when they go into the battles of World War III with old and faulty equipment, because you can read in the news how the U.S. has been having problems with a lot of its aircraft and armored personnel carriers crashing or catching on fire because a lot of those systems are a few decades old and are just refurbished. And I also read that some U.S. soldiers were killed a while ago because they were using holographic sights which weren't lined up properly, so when they were shooting at their targets they completely missed. And when you're on a battlefield like that, every second counts between life and death. One example is Declarane, a flame retardant used in insulation on all U.S. missile systems. The sole source of the material is the Belgian company Occidental Chemical. Worse yet, the precursor to make Declarane used to come from China, but is no longer available, so there is now no source for Declarane in the world. U.S. fighter jets rely on Sidewinder and AMRAAM air-to-air missiles to dominate the skies, but what happens when they run out? The sole source of dimeryl diisocyanate, Slovakia Brothers, a key ingredient in the missile's propellant, has informed the Pentagon that it will be leaving the business soon, leaving the U.S. with no qualified source, according to the report. And that brings me to my next precepts in Isaiah chapter 19. I'm going to start at verse 14. Yahweh hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt, which we know the spiritual Egypt today is the United States, go to Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. And look at these decisions the United States have been making lately, such as leaving the Iranian nuclear deal, which is turning a lot of the U.S.'s tried and true allies against it, and also using foreign-made parts for your military. That's definitely erring in every work, because what if those nations decide to sabotage those parts? Verse 15, neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail, branch, or rush may do. And there must not be any work in Egypt if the military-industrial complex is relying on foreign-made parts. And also, look at the U.S. economy. It's in the shitter. The money's just about worthless, and there's definitely going to be no Make America Great Again. A lot of these jobs are being automated and sent overseas, and really the only jobs that are being made are minimum wage jobs. People are committing suicide because they're losing their jobs that they relied on to help their family, and also you've got people turning to opioids and getting addicted because, again, the works, they either lose their jobs or they can't live off the jobs that are made. Verse 16, in that day shall Egypt be like unto women, and it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of Yahweh of hosts, which he shaketh over it. And pretty soon the Most High is going to manifest himself more openly to the average peon out here, to where they can't say a natural disaster was just that, a natural disaster. They're going to see that there must have been some divine intervention involved. And also you've been hearing of an uptick in UFO sightings, which we know those UFOs are really the chariots of the Most High. One of the biggest problems noted by the Pentagon is the lack of diversity in the industrial base. About 97% of DoD funds for missile and munitions procurement goes to just two companies, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Almost all second and third tier suppliers of munitions components, 98% in both instances, are sole sources. A particular concern to the report's authors were thermal batteries, solid rocket motors, fuses, and small turbine engines, which all rely on just one or two manufacturers. President Donald Trump has raised the Pentagon's funding in order to rebuild the depleted military and launch a crusade to revive U.S. manufacturing, but that may not be enough. We may be too far down the path to resurrect an authentic munitions industrial base. Again, neither shall there be any work for Egypt. Mackenzie Eaglin of the American Enterprise Institute told Defense News, commenting on the report. So then the question becomes, now what? With the U.S. capability to produce vital parts and materials for weapons systems and ammunition dwindling, Washington is facing the risk that a conflict with China could rely on Chinese-made parts, Defense News noted. Slovakia Brothers. Munitions aren't the only problem either. Maintenance has been hit just as hard by the years of overuse and underfunding of industrial infrastructure, according to the report. U.S. naval shipyards, for example, have not been able to meet the maintenance needs, resulting in compounding problems. The neglect has been so severe that in fiscal years 2000 through 2016, inadequate facilities and equipment led to maintenance delays that contribute in part to more than 1,300 lost operational days for aircraft carriers and 12,500 lost operational days for submarines. A January report by the Pentagon's Director of Operations and Testing noted that half of the F-35 stealth fighter fleet is not mission capable due to supply and maintenance problems. Lockheed Martin's futuristic fighter has a lifetime cost estimated at over $1 trillion. So as you brothers can see, Esau's on the ropes now. This should get your spirits up to push harder since we're getting to the end of this. So with this video, I hope you brothers were edified. Kwam Yasharala, Ababa Ball. Until next time, Shalom.